All right. I call this meeting of the Committee of Adjustment to order. As required under the Planning Act, a public meeting is being held prior to the committee making a decision on these applications. And to start things off, I will introduce the committee members, and Charlotte has been enough to make me a nice sheet here, so I'm just going to follow it. It's nice and simple. So I'm the chair, Mr. Robertson, and we have Mr. Mars, the vice chair, and we have members, Councillor Yeo, Ms. Richardson, Ms. Archer, Mr. Strangway. And we have staff remotely, Mr. Harding, Planner 2, Mr. Stainton, Planner 2, Mr. Hawley, the Manager of Planning, and here we have the Secretary-Treasurer, Mrs. Ray, and the Recording Secretary, Ms. Crockford-Toomey. Very good. Don't think I missed anyone. All righty. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as printed? Mrs. Richardson, Ms. Archer, comments or questions? All those in favor? And that carries. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Being none, approval of the minutes of the last meeting, and I believe everyone is here. Mr. Strangway, do I have a seconder? Councillor Yeo, comments or questions? All those in favor? And that carries. All right. I would remind committee members and everyone that we are on YouTube, so everyone's viewing. Not everyone has the ability at this point in time to speak, but everyone is viewing from outside. So for the benefit of those watching, the committee will hear comments, gather information, and may ask questions to clarify statements made. The committee may ask and answer questions or redirect questions to the appropriate person. Please note that any information or comments given to the committee during this meeting are considered evidence. We will first hear from staff, then the applicant or his or her agent. We will then hear from any person in support of or from those who have questions, concerns, or are opposed to the application. Finally, the applicant or his or her agent will have an opportunity to respond to any of the statements made to the committee. I would advise that when you do appear on the screen to speak, that you would provide your name for us for clarity. And we will afford you 10 minutes to get your information in. No one has ever taken that long, but we will afford you that. And if you find you just can't possibly get it in within those 10 minutes, then I'll ask the committee if they would afford you a couple of more minutes. That has never happened, so I don't expect today will be any exception. But just so everyone knows, so you're 10 minutes, but usually it's much shorter than that. All righty, I think we're there. We don't need to go through where our sheets are because no one's here. All right, moving on to the agenda. And we're dealing with file number D20-2020-003. And this is a vacant lot, Sugar Bush Trail, Geographic Township of Fenelon. Mr. Harding, are you with us?
Yes, I am, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
For the benefit of the committee as well as the members of the public that are tuned in today, I do not have a webcam, so it's just going to be me speaking coming up on my screen, so this should all be good. So this application proposes to permit the on an existing lot of record. Relief is sought from the Water and Environmental Protection Zone setbacks in order to permit the subject property is located on a peninsula within Cameron Lake. Here is an unusual shape with a short southwestern lot line and a longer northeastern southeast by Cameron Lake, and to the northwest by the private Sugar Bush Trail. So here we have an aerial photograph surrounding neighborhood. It looks like my internet connection is a little bit unstable here, so if there are clarifications that are needed, I will provide that. So this is the septic system in what is defined as the front yard, being between the house and the road. Fenelon Falls Township of Fenelon bylaw defines it differently. The yard between the house and Sugarbush Trail is where house in the middle of the lot, and then the rest of the yard between the house and the shoreline. The committee may recall that this is a second submission from the proponent. The first, or rectangular in nature, needed a side yard setback relief and a bit more water and EP setback. It also had a deck that spanned the entire side of the dwelling that faced the water. So we can see in this iteration that and minimized, and the water setback has been improved by 2 meters from the original circulation. So here we have the elevations from the sides of what the house will look like. And then the face towards the shoreline and toward, in this case, it is a main floor with a walkout basement design that is proposed with a So I'm going to walk committee through the site. So the photograph is me sitting a little bit south on Sugarbush Trail looking to the northeast. Where the arrow is the approximate. The photograph on the right is me standing right in front of the parcel looking out towards the lake. A sense of size. So then the photograph on the left is looking up. And the one on the right is looking to the southwest. The lot to the immediate subject property. So this is me moving into the parcel. The yard between where the house is going to be and the shoreline. Other pictures committee that show you back in winter when I was able to walk out on the ice, what this property looks like and the surrounding houses and the character that those houses display to the shoreline. So committee, the photograph on the right is the height of the built form that can be found in the immediate neighborhood here. So we have a range of construction, what's being proposed, 1-story with walkout basement in this particular case, and the location of the yellow arrow on the far right of that photograph on the right-hand side. So committee, this next image is going to be used as a reference point for the following photograph. 3 different colored lines here. We have the red line, which identifies the point of the house in a linear projection. So where you've got this tall gable frame, that's what the red line is indicating, the extent of the projection into the parcel that gable frame will have. Line here, which represents the extension really of the deck on the south. in relation to the shoreline. And you can see that that also captures the furthest extent, starts to narrow down into this triangle. And then we have this purple line, which matches where the majority of the dwelling wall rests or is proposed. This gable for this living space room here. So each of these lines is about 1 point, just to give committee a sense of depth. The photographs. So of course, these are approximations, but this is my best guess based on the topographic information I did. So we have the red line, which is that furthest point projection of that triangle piece of the dwelling. About in line, slightly to the north side of the door of the dwelling to the northeast, which is the furthest extent of the decking, which is falling just in front of this large tree ground there. And then we've got this purple line, the left side of this tree in the background there as well. And this purple line represents the remaining facing the shoreline minus that projection for that A-frame type design. Just having another picture here to reorient committee for what these lines mean. And then I'll head into the next picture with lines on the photographs looking to the southwest. Okay, so we've got on the right all those three lines together. The photograph on the left shoreline is at an angle. This photograph on the left looks to portray the rear yard in a bit more. With the perspectives, it's kind of challenging. Committee will note that this red line being the furthest extent of a rise in the parcel. So the dwelling is proposed to be up higher within the yard that to match that existing top of slope. And that is it. I'm going to move back now to these photographs here. So this one, it is a very constrained lot. The Conservation Authority has provided comment previously that they want to see that shoreline as possible. Right now, in order to put it as far away from the shoreline as possible, the dwelling has to sit in the constrains what that building footprint is going to look like. Comments that have been received from the public, most of them have been documented in the staff report. Letters of objection that were received in the previous 24 hours or so. One is of 27 Sugarbush Trail, which is the property to the northeast, and the 31 Sugarbush Trail. Some of these comments have to do more with, and that's something that unfortunately the city cannot control for. We has to do with property values. That's not something that's within the purview of the Planning Act to look at. of the content in those comments is very similar to some of the comments that were received previously. And those comments specifically have to do with, is the reduction to the water appropriate? Has it been minimized to the extent possible for this site? And its best interests to approve the revised footprint that has been put forward today. It is a very interesting question, committee. The applicant has made revisions, and we've looked at that. Could be further analysis that's done to see whether or not a different building envelope is possible. More conversation with the Conservation Authority to see if they're even agreeable to moving the location of the tile bed process. But it is going to require a lot more conversation, because if it is possible, then what the building envelope could look like and the variances that would be required. That I am hearing, I am going to revise my recommendation to ask that we have a deferral Conservation Authority to see if the tile bed can be moved, and if so, then to have a further see what sort of building footprint that would free up. This time respectfully recommends that the application be deferred pending further review. Thank you, Mr.
All right, question to you, Mr. Harding. Are you looking at a time frame for this deferral?
I think for event, we need to be looking at a minimum of 2 months, perhaps 3. I would recommend, and let me just look at my meeting schedule here. That no later than November 5th.
All right, November 5th isn't the date.
Analysis.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just to say that come back earlier to the October 15th meeting, then that's definitely something that we would be pursuing as well to seek a resolution.
All right. 2 dates in November for meetings. All right. And they're, I guess according to Mr. Harding, they're the 5th and the 15th?
To clarify, so the 2 dates in November. So at this point, I'm recommending November 5th. The 15th I was referring to was the 15th of October.
All right. All right, thank you. All right, he's asking for a motion to defer. Mr. Marsh? Okay, and we heard there the time frame, so 2 November, the meeting in November 5th. Do I have a seconder? Mr. Richardson? All right, all in favor? And that carries, thank you. All right, moving right along. We're dealing with file number D20-2020-016, and this is 17 Gardner Shore Avenue, Geographic Township of Fenelon. And again, Mr. Harding, go ahead, sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Doug Carroll. David?
Sorry, Doug, this is, Mr. Carroll, this is strange to everyone, I can tell you, so I do apologize to you for that. Did you wish to speak? Where is he? Is he on?
Uh,
Well, yeah, it's a deferral, so that's one of the reasons that I didn't. The other reason is that we're kind of flying here on one wing. So I think given the fact that we've already passed a motion to defer it, unless Mr. Carroll has a problem with the deferral, and that's a little bit late for that now.
How could it be too late?
We didn't even get a chance.
This is the problem.
We
Mr.
don't
Chair.
normally, if I may, we don't normally go through the process when we're looking at a deferral. And the only reason we do that sometimes is if there's someone here actually that speaking against or whatever. But I didn't ask that because, as I say, we're flying on one wing here. And Doug, I'll let you say a bit. Go ahead. And if you're now, we're speaking strictly to deferral, so nothing else. So if you wish to, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee members, staff. I'd ask you to consider the comments from Ann Elmhurst dated March 6th and the Conservation Authority permit 2020-077.
Yeah, no, Doug, hang on, or Mr. Carroll. I'm strictly comments related to the deferral, if you were for or against that. But as far as going into any of the details, I don't want to do that until it comes back in November.
I'm opposed to the reasons for the deferral because we were not privileged to have them. You've got us at a disadvantage, Mr. Chairman. Those comments from either the neighbors or the Conservation Authority have yet to be provided to me or my clients. So
The deferral should work right into your hand there.
with the breakup of David's audio, it was difficult to connect the dots with regards to his comments. And we have, with regard to the location of the tile bed, we have the comment from the approval authority, the city. And with regard to the Conservation Authority and environmental concerns, we have a permit in hand.
Okay,
issued by
Doug,
the
or, geez, Mr. Carroll, I'm going to stop you there because I think we're getting into the file and I don't want to do that. So I would suggest, given your comments, sir, before, this probably would fit your agenda very well, the fact that we're deferring this so you can consider these further situations. So, okay, are you content with that?
I have no choice, Mr. Chairman, because the committee has accepted one side of the issue without hearing the other side. So we will wait and see what the recommendation from the committee is, if anything, beyond the deferral. Thank you.
All right, and again, we've never, that I'm aware of, had the two sides argue with respect. Oh yeah. If it's if the deferral comes up, then it's usually short and sweet because obviously there's information missing, or people aren't here that need to be here, that sort of thing. So anyway, again, I apologize to you because I should have asked that, even though it is a deferral. So hopefully we'll see you in November.
Prefer October 15th if possible, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, speaking to the process in which we got to a deferral, if I could, just briefly.
Mr. Chair, okay, so
Sorry, is that better?
it's David talking again. So just before we transition
talking?
into
Hang
the
on,
second
yeah,
application,
Mr. Harding, go ahead. Well, we don't normally do that, though. That's what I'm saying. We normally... Mr. Harding, you want to speak? I'm not...
Due respect.
All right. So it's been deferred. We've heard November the 5th, but that's sort of a tentative date. So if it's the later date, I don't think that... I'm sorry?
Mr. Harding indicated October the 15th or November the 5th, whichever date he could meet.
And I think the motion was November the 5th, so if I'm correct? Yes, so, all right, we'll leave that as such. And again, an apology to Mr. Carroll, because I normally would have asked, but as I say, we're trying to fly with one wing here, and it's frustrating. All right. Have we got to number 2? Yes, I believe
Mr.
I went
Chair.
through. Oh, I've got hands all over the place. Council.
Yeah, I'm sorry, given that last one, I wonder if you'd accept a follow-up motion that the file come back to committee as soon as possible. I say no later than October 15th, because they're just looking for a couple of comments, and it shouldn't take 3 months to get that.
Well, I think you heard what Mr. Carroll said, though. He indicated that he would prefer November the, what was it? October. Geez, why am I getting it? He would have preferred October.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with the proposed motion by Member
Bring it
Yo.
back in a month. I don't
Thank
care
you.
when it comes back, but no
All right,
later than.
hang on, let's do it this way. All right. You can note this in the minutes. Mr. Marsh, will you withdraw your motion?
No, it's a motion to defer. You can't withdraw it. It's passed. It is. All we have to do is clarify. They have no later than, and I think Mr. Yo's saying the same thing, no later than. So if they're ready in a month, they can come back in a month. I don't care when they come back, as long as it's no later than November the 5th.
That's the point I was trying to make. Nothing's written in stone with the motion. So if the motion says it is to be back on October the
No later than
15th,
November 15th.
and it's November, then we'll leave that to the planners to decide. Why are we getting into such a squirm here? Like, it's nothing's written in stone with this. We've got a motion that says October 15. If it doesn't come back until November the 25th, I don't think anyone's going to cry in their beer. We'll leave it alone and move on. Mr. Strangway, you had a comment?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your frustration with this. I'm just wondering, during the first presentation, Mr. Harding, we lost some of what he said, and I think some of it was, all of it was important. And I'm just wondering if there anything we can do to correct it before we go ahead with the second presentation.
Well, I'll ask Joel, and perhaps, is there, and there is a problem with the connection, obviously, Joel, so.
Yeah, we were just wondering, David, if you could maybe try speaking at length without the screen share to reduce the amount of data being used by your computer, because that might speed it up, and then you can just relay to Charlotte what slide you would like to have shown on the screen, and I'll try to do my best to make sure that you can see that, and hopefully that helps. Otherwise, we'll need you to call in for your audio.
This is exactly the situation we had at the last meeting with this setup, was that half the time you couldn't understand some of the applicants. They were crackling, and I guess because of whatever equipment they had or whatever. So we're struggling here, and we'll obviously have to keep struggling. And so everyone, please be patient, and we'll do our very best to hear you, and hopefully the recommendations will reflect some of the things that have been said. All right.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to go through
I
this
will-
again
so-
because of the turmoil we've just been through. So it's file number D20-2020-016, 17 Gardner Shore Avenue, Geographic Township of Fenelon. Mr. Harding, and would you, perhaps, Mr. Harding, if you could, slowly, and I realize you're having your problems at your end as well, but whatever we can do to fix this would be appreciated. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this better?
Sounds very good right now, yeah, but is that a guarantee?
Not a guarantee, but we will just have to see what happens.
No, that's fine. Proceed. It sounds good
Mr.
at the
Chair,
present time.
Very good. Mr. Chair, I just note some of the other people that are tuned in to this Zoom meeting. I believe are members that were looking to speak with respect to the application that has been deferred. I was wondering if you, Mr. Chair, would consider at least accepting their comments since they're in the meeting today, on the full understanding that this is being still referred back.
I don't have a problem with that. In fact, I think it's probably in order. Are you there?
Oh, I'm here.
I don't know if you heard my response. I said I'm agreeable to that. I'm sure the committee would be too, and we feel that that's in order. I'd already apologized to Mr. Carroll because I would like to have heard him, but just because of the goings-on, we didn't. So, yes, I'm okay with that, and I'm sure the committee is too.
Okay. All right, very well. You were cutting out there a bit, so we're moving on to application 16.
What was that? Yes, 016, please, where are we?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay. So this application proposes to reduce the minimum front yard setback and increase the distance that eaves may project into a rear yard in order to permit the construction of a detached garage. Next slide, please. So there we have an aerial photograph of the neighborhood. The property is currently vacant. A dwelling is in the process of being constructed. Next slide, please. So here we can see the dwelling on the shore side, the tile bed in purple in the middle, and the garage on the right. So in this particular case, the garage is proposed in this location because of the presence of the tile bed and the construction limitations therein. Next slide, please. So here we have some elevations of what the garage will look like. The bay doors are proposed to face perpendicular to the street. So the upper right-hand visual there is the face of the garage that will face towards the road. So we have two small frosted windows that are proposed, as well as stone cladding across the bottom and vinyl cladding across the top to add a lot of visual interest there. Next slide, please. So committee, here are pictures of the subject property looking from the street out towards the parcel. The dotted red lines are the approximate location of where the footprint will be for the proposed garage. Next slide, please. So here we have some other pictures denoting the footprint of the proposed garage. So in this case, even though it is moving close to the road, we do have some very good facade treatments that are proposed, and not the entire width of the lot is taken up by this garage face as well. You still have the driveway entrance and the lands beside the driveway, which is shown in the photograph on the left. Next slide, please. So here we have some additional pictures of the neighborhood. The photograph on the right is the lot next door, and the other photograph is moving a little bit further down Gardner Shore, the western side side of Gardner Shore, so we can see there are some other accessory buildings present within front yards. The bylaw does permit this. It's just proximity that we're dealing with. Next slide, please. And there we have another picture of Gardner Shore eastern lots, or the lots to the northeast. So if we go back up a couple of photos, that will do just fine. Thank you. So this is developed on the south side of Cameron Lake, and there's a variety of seasonal and year-round dwellings that are proposed, or sorry, that so staff is of the opinion that the proposal meets the 4 tests for minor variance. And a lot to add to the streetscape for this proposal. And the projections the front yard are very minor and are not going to cause any adverse massing impacts. I think in this that are proposed for this garage, it will contribute significantly to the streetscape. Staff respectfully recommends, subject to the conditions identified in the report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Harding. Are there any questions of the planner? All right. Is the applicant online? You wish to speak to the application? Does the applicant wish to speak to the application?
I have nothing more to say.
What's
the
that?
application.
I hear a voice.
Yes, the applicant is online.
All right, go ahead, sir.
I have nothing more to say, other than I'm looking forward to building it and moving to Fenland Falls.
All right, that's what you wish to say?
I have nothing else. Yeah.
All right. Are there any questions of the
Yeah,
applicant?
and Mr. Hood's on the line here as well, and if there's any questions by the committee, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, it wouldn't appear there's any questions from the committee.
Okay. Yep.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak in support of the application? In support of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? All right, being none, committee, Councillor Yeo.
As printed?
All right, Mr. Maher, second it. Comments or questions? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right, moving along. We're now dealing with, where are we here? File number D20-2020-017. And this is 216 Hickory Beach Road, former township of Earlham. And we're dealing with, I believe, Mr. Stainton. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
So far, thank you.
Great. The purpose and effect of the application is to request relief from the Earlham zoning bylaw to permit the construction of accessory building, a detached garage in the front yard of the subject property, and to reduce the minimum front yard depth from 10 meters to 7.62 meters to facilitate the construction of an accessory building, the detached garage. The owners of 216 Hickory Beach Road have made an application to construct a 111.48 square meter or 1,200 square foot detached garage within the front yard.
Go ahead.
As seen from the, I was just waiting, sorry, Mr. Chair, for the delay on the slides. As seen from the aerial photo, the subject property is bordered by 2 other rural residential lots, north and south. approximately 1 acre in size. The majority of the subject property is under agricultural production. There is a water course that runs to the west of the subject property. You can see the site plan showing an interior side yard setback of 21.16 meters with the reduced front yard setback of 7.62 meters. Here's an elevation sketch showing the 3 garage doors, along with a total of 6 windows. The location of the septic system is in the southeastern section of the front yard, preventing the garage from being situated in said location. The photo on the left shows the location of the septic system, right here. By situating the garage within the front yard, rear yard amenity space is preserved. Moreover, the presence of a water course in the rear, as shown on the previous aerial photo of the property, presents environmental constraints with respect to locating the garage in the rear yard. The proposed location minimizes any impacts to water quality through additional buffer space between the water course and the development. It is important to note that Kawartha Conservation has issued a permit for the detached garage and they have no concerns with the proposed variance. The photo on the right shows the distance to the rear yard shed and the water course, which can be seen in behind. Due to the constraints of the property, the most appropriate building envelope for the detached garage is within the front yard. While the garage is proposed within the front yard, it is anticipated that the garage use will complement the character of the property and streetscape by providing enclosed storage for vehicles and other items that would otherwise be stored outside within the front yard. A considerable spatial separation is proposed between the garage and the front property line of 7.62 meters, as no adverse massing impacts are anticipated by permitting the garage in the proposed location. A cedar hedge and wood fence, as can be seen here with the wood fence, with flower beds detracts from the presence of the proposed location of the garage. New plantings of boxwood and crimson maple, seen on the photo on the left, have been placed along the front lot line, in addition to the fence. Once established, further privacy will be gained through some vegetated screening. The wood fence in relation to the gravel pad of the proposed garage is shown on the right. The photo on the left illustrates the front of the new wooden fence with hanging baskets and a hosta garden, further screening the prominence of the detached garage. The picture on the right shows the density of the vegetative screening one would encounter if traveling northbound on Hickory Beach Road. Given the spatial separation of buildings and structures between the adjacent rural residential lots, the lower density development maintains the intent of a rural residential lot. Any visual impacts to the southern residential lot are mitigated through the presence of mature conifers along the southern property boundary, which can be seen in the background. As the garage is not proposed directly in front of the dwelling will continue to appear as the principal use when viewed from the road. Based on the contents of the report, staff respectfully recommends approval of the subject application, subject to the conditions of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stain, and you were very clear there, so obviously you're working. Questions of the planner, Mr. Marsh?
Could you go to the Schedule C? Okay, so where is the septic there? Is it?
The septic is actually
Okay.
just down here.
So I guess
in
my
the-
that's what I thought. So what's prohibiting them from putting if the garage were in line, if the front of the garage was in line with the front of the house, a variance wouldn't be required. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And
This drawing is slightly, well, actually, this this drawing is actually not to scale, and it is actually situated closer to the dwelling than as portrayed on this.
Right, but I guess my concern is, there's nothing to stop this, the variance isn't required. They could in fact build and comply. Is that not correct? If they could set the garage back, the front of the house and the front of the garage would be in line, and there'd be no, they would get a building permit. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I guess my concern is, what's the necessity of this? Like, why would we not, is it strictly aesthetic? Usually people come and they want a variance because they can't comply with.
Correct.
So
The applicant cannot situate obviously over the septic system, and I believe they wanted some spatial separation between the house and the location of the proposed garage. The well is actually situated to the rear, as you can see here as well, which also constrains the location of the garage.
But you've got 23 meters on, what's the side yard setback? What's the minimum side yard?
On the interior side, going north or going south.
North.
So from its proposed location, they've got 23.16 meters.
And what's required? In the building?
I believe it is much less than that. Let me see what the bylaw says. Do we have a copy of the zoning bylaw? Let me see. Sure, in Verulam, if it's 2 meters.
So there's lots of room is what I'm getting at. I'm confused as to what the reasoning is for this, when in fact.
Perhaps the applicant could provide additional
The applicant-
insight as to the necessity for the variance.
Okay. Is the applicant online?
Hi. Sorry, this is Teresa speaking. Yeah, we were wanting the variance because if we run it north and south, then we're taking up basically 40 feet of front yard, which we would then have to pave 40 more feet of front yard. Whereas if we get the variance, we're using the existing driveway, only including basically minimal more paving. We were just trying to reduce the impact of paving all the grass we already have and we wanted to use existing driveway. So we thought it would aesthetically look much better if we don't have 40 feet of paved yard in the front yard.
So what's the setback now then? We've got, to the front of the house, it's 19 meters roughly, 18.59, which somebody help me put that into feet quickly. 6, good man. So it's already got a 60-foot setback.
The house does, yes.
If we were running it parallel to the house, the 40 feet would have to run north and south, then making us pave 40 feet of the front yard.
So it's really, it's aesthetics.
Reducing, and we're getting close to encroaching on, because in the northeast corner is where the water course starts. There is I think the plans were included for the Conservation Authority, and that northeast corner is where the water course does start.
Yeah, your setback would only
I'm
be,
not-
your setback wouldn't, I don't think the Conservation Authority would stop you from building. Quiet. All right, that's fine, that's my question. I question why you need a variance, but I'll wait and see what comes of this.
The lady that was speaking, your name is, ma'am?
It's Teresa Jenkinson. I'm Brent Duff's wife.
All right, well, yeah, don't go away. There may be some more questions. I just want to see if there's any further questions of the planner. Are there, committee? Nothing, all right. Do you wish to speak further to it, ma'am?
I don't think so at this point.
All right, are there any questions from the committee to the applicant? All right, being none, all right, thank you. All right. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in support of the application? In support of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in objection to the application? Objection to the applications? Mr. Mars, question?
Question to the planner then. Under
This is to you, Mr. Stainton.
Under number 3, it says, do the variances maintain the intent and purpose? It says yes. However, the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw is to restrict the placement of accessory buildings within a front yard. So that can be obtained. So how can this be, how can it possibly meet the intent when in fact the intent is not to be in the front yard, and that can be attained?
Through you, Mr. Chair, again, with respect to the constraints placed by the septic system along with the well, the water course, and the costs to the applicant by situating the garage further to the west, those act as constraints. And given the rural residential nature of the lot, the impact to situating the garage slightly in the front yard is minimal.
But I understand what you're saying is perhaps preferred. However, can in fact that garage be placed? Is this necessary? Is the variance necessary in order for these people to get a building permit? Because what you're stating is there's nothing with the Conservation Authority that prevents them from building and meeting the proper setbacks, so it's in line with the front of the house. Am I correct on that?
I would respectfully disagree. I believe the concerns from the Conservation Authority that were expressed were with respect to not only the watercourse, but the adjacent wetland that is part of the watercourse, which further restricts the situation of the detached garage to the west.
Is there a report from the
There were comments provided to the effect of no concerns from the Conservation Authority, and a permit has been issued. I believe it was in October of last year. I would have to double check. Let me see the report.
But the report doesn't say they have concerns if it's placed further back.
I guess the intent of them situating it where it is to alleviate any potential impacts to that water course. Hence, they were okay with the situation of the proposed garage. When we get into a situation where we continue to push that envelope further back, they may have had objections to that location. But given the fact this is what was proposed, they had no objections.
Back to the zoning bylaw, and the zoning bylaw, it does not meet the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw because it can be obtained with what's there. You can meet all your side yards, your backyards, front yards, and your setbacks from a wetland. There's nothing that says you can't. That's like, they didn't come because they got turned down for a permit because it was too close to the wetlands. Is that correct?
But again, the only proposal that they made was the proposal in its current configuration, is my understanding.
And if I may, it was their idea, in order to save some property and this sort of thing, to place the garage where it is, thus requiring the variance. Is that correct?
Yes, that was one of the rationale, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I'll be speaking against it because this certainly doesn't meet the intent.
Councillor Yule?
No, I was going to give you a motion.
I'm not there yet. I want to, yep. All right. Mr. Steen, did you have anything further to add?
Not at this time, Mr. Chair.
All right, and no further questions of the planner? All right, and I asked the applicant, she indicated she had nothing further to add. And I believe...
Actually, I do have my hand up, sorry. We did have a septic survey done as part of this variance, and we were advised as part of that septic survey that should something happen to our current septic system, it will also not be able to go back there, and it would have to go somewhere in the backyard as well. But yeah, we were advised that with the current building code, that the current placement of the septic is not acceptable should something happen and need to be replaced there.
All right, thank you. Any further questions of the applicant? All right, I think we went through, but anyone wishing to speak in support of the application, Anyone wishing to speak in objection to the application? Objection to the application. Councillor Yule?
Yeah, I'll give you the motion as printed.
Further comments or questions? All right. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. All right. All right, moving right along. We're now dealing with D20-2020-018, and this is 8 Edward Road, Geographic Township of Mariposa. And again, Mr. Staton, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose and effect of this application is to seek relief from the Township of Mariposa zoning bylaw to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 5.11 meters in order to permit the construction of an enclosed porch. This application is proposing to replace a derelict shed with a 17.84 square meter or 192 square foot enclosed porch to the rear of a recently reconstructed residential dwelling. A new unenclosed deck is also proposed abutting the porch, with a door from the covered porch to the deck on the east side. However, the deck is only 0.46 meters in height and is considered landscaping under the zoning bylaw. The subject property is located within the hamlet of Manila in an established residential neighborhood that contains a mix of historic and modern residential buildings.
Mr. Steen, could I stop you there? You've started to crackle a bit, so is there something going on at your end, or?
Not to my knowledge. I do appreciate the interruption, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I wanted to do that because you were starting to break up a bit, and we need to hear it all. So continue, and let's just see how it is now.
Okay. Feel free to interrupt me again if there are technical difficulties. The previous dwelling was constructed in 1865 and was recently replaced with a new single detached dwelling, which was designed to preserve the general character of the neighborhood, as you will see later in the presentation. Before I go to the site visit photos, I wanted to share the site plan associated with the development. The lot shape in relation to the development and the orientation of the existing dwelling plays a key role in the requested reduced rear yard setback of 5.11 meters. The proposal will provide increased amenity space for the existing dwelling and will considerably improve the aesthetics of the rear yard over the existing shed. Together with the proposed abutting deck to the east, the porch will revitalize rear yard space, providing an entertainment area to an otherwise unusable space in its current condition. The encroachment into the rear yard setback still provides for utilization and access to the greater rear yard portion to the southwest of the proposed porch, improving the overall setback from the property line adjacent to the existing attached shed. The photo on the left shows the existing deck and shed facing westward in relation to the dwelling, with the photo on the right showing the view of the proposed location of the porch from the rear property line facing north. The intent of the rear yard setback is to provide sufficient rear yard amenity space, addressing massing impacts and reducing land use and privacy conflicts between abutting properties. The property is an irregular L-shaped lot, as previously mentioned, which presents a reduction in rear yard space for any development south of the existing dwelling unit. The proposed 2.39 meter reduction of the rear yard requirement is also not anticipated to pose any land use compatibility issues with the neighboring properties to the south. The proposed location of the enclosed porch represents a near 1 meter improvement over the existing or the previous rear yard setback. The photo on the left shows the extent of the rear yard space immediately adjacent to the proposed porch, facing east, with the photo on the right showing the staked location of the staked location of the corner of the lot facing northward. The septic system is situated west of the dwelling. The dwelling on the lot to the southeast, addressed as 18 Church Street, is not located immediately behind the dwelling at 8 Edwards Street, as shown on the photo on the right, currently under construction. And I believe it was the subject of a minor variance in 2019. Nor do the walls of either dwelling face one another. There's a significant distance between the rear of the dwelling, located at 16971 Simcoe Street, and the proposed enclosed porch of the subject land will not impact the rear yard. No massing, land use privacy impacts are anticipated due to the location and orientation of the proposed enclosed porch. The photo on the left shows the reconstructed dwelling facing eastward and is taken on the western side of the proposed enclosed porch. Bear with me as I'm trying to move to the next slide. Excellent. The photo on the left has been taken from the southeast corner of the lot. Just giving you another overview of the location of the enclosed porch, as well as where the proposed deck will be, replacing the existing deck. And the photo on the right is showing the driveway, as well as the well location looking northeast on the lot. Comments were received from Engineering Division, Building Division, and the Part 8 Sewage System Supervisor with no concerns regarding the application. Comments in favor of the application were also provided by Annie Harding, who is the resident on the southeast corner of Edward and Church, having no objection to the proposal. As such, staff respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions of the report. Thank you.
And thank you. Are there any questions to the planner? I have a question, Mr. Stainton. I'm assuming this derelict shed is probably is right in the footprint for this new enclosed porch. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, Chair.
I asked that question because on occasion we put the condition in there that the shed be removed simply because sometimes circumstances change as building proceeds. But you're content that the shed would have to come down to allow the porch?
Correct. and the applicant has expressed a tremendous desire to remove the existing shed as well.
All right, thank you. No questions of the planner? Is the applicant online? Do you wish to speak to the application?
Hello, I'm Tim Deegan, and this is
Leah.
Leah. We're the applicants, and we thank you very much, councilors and Mr. Chairman, for taking the time to hear our case. And we are looking forward to moving into the house and fixing the back of the house that looks awful as it is, improving the setback, and having a nice little space to relax outside. So,
All right.
that's all. Thank you.
Could we get your names there, just for the record?
I'm Tim Deegan, and this is my fiance.
Leah Spears.
All right. Any questions of the applicants? All right, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now, is there anyone online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of the application? Anyone online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Committee.
As
All right.
printed.
Moved by Mrs. Archer, seconded by Mr. Strangway, that the motion be passed as printed. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right. We're now dealing with file number D20-2020-020, and this is 93 Cresswell Road, Geographic Township of Mariposa. And again, Mr. Stainton, you're a busy fellow today, Mr. Stainton.
I am, yes. I'm making up for last meeting. Yes, for sure. Can everyone hear me? I am getting a message that my audio is dicey. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, you were starting to break up pretty good there at the end of the last presentation you had. So, yeah, we'll monitor and see how it goes. Thank you.
Yeah, feel free to interject, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
So the purpose and effect of this application is to seek relief from the Township of Mariposa zoning bylaw to reduce the minimum setback from 7.5 meters to 4.2 meters to permit the construction of a covered porch. Again, this application is proposing to replace an existing 22.5 square meter.
I'm going to interrupt because you're really breaking up badly.
I wonder if we switch to Joel managing the screen share, if that will.
He says he already is. I believe that's what I heard. All right, try it again, Mr. Stainton, if you would.
Certainly.
I think we're starting to get the hang of these delays and that sort of thing. But anyway, we're trying to be very patient here. Go ahead.
Okay. So the application is proposing to replace an existing 22.5 square meter or 242.19 square meter front porch in disrepair that is non-compliant with the zoning bylaw. A replacement covered porch of the same dimensions is proposed. Next slide. It's located within a residential neighborhood contains a mix of historic and modern. Hello?
Yeah, you were starting to break up pretty badly there, but try again.
The subject property is located within the hamlet of Cresswell in an established residential neighborhood. Buildings. The building was constructed in 1900.
I'm not sure what language that sounds like now, so I'll go upstairs. Is there anything we can do to improve on that, sir?
Can you call in?
I could.
If you have a landline, then we'd get a good clear sound from you at least.
I don't have a landline. I have a cell phone that I can use.
We could try it if it gets a better signal than your internet right now.
Will he be able to use his video on the phone? No, that's what I thought, so. Well, we'll have to go with whatever works, so.
Let me just check something here. I'm going to test my microphone first. So it makes noises.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt here, Mr. Stainton. Yeah, just so we know, Joel, just for your information, I've been advised that Charlotte can actually run the video for Mr. Stainton. But I think we'll take a 5-minute break just to let everybody kind of get.
Is the audio okay now?
All right. I've been advised these mics are absolutely booming, so I guess I'll try and tone down as well, and just to remind everyone. All right, so I believe, Mr. Stainton, you were on with your presentation. You want to start again, please? Like, not start again, but where you left off?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will try to start from the aerial photograph of Cresswell. So the subject property is located within the hamlet of Cresswell in an established residential neighborhood that contains a mix of historic and modern residential buildings. The dwelling was constructed in 1900, according to MPAC. The location of the homes in relation to the depth of the lots within the hamlet of Cresswell varies significantly along Cresswell Road, as shown in the aerial photo. The dwelling addressed as 91 Cresswell Road, which is the parcel on the east, has a deep front yard setback, while the that is on the west, while the residence at 81 Cresswell Road, which is further to the west, has virtually no front yard setback. Next slide, please. This slide shows a site plan of the property. Next slide, please. Dwellings within the neighborhood contain a variety of entryway designs as well. While the existing porch on the subject lands is uncovered, the proposed covered porch and associated railing will further complement the character of the neighborhood by proposing a design which maintains the historical character of the dwelling. Shown is a rendering of the front elevation of the proposed covered porch. Next slide, please. The proposal will provide increased amenity space for the existing dwelling and will considerably improve the aesthetics of the front yard. As the covered porch is open on the front and both sides, there are no anticipated massing issues and impacts to sightlines. Overall, the functionality of the front yard will not be diminished. Shown is the location of the front of the dwelling, as well as a photo looking to the east of the front of the dwelling. You can see the established building line of the neighboring property to the east in the background. Next slide. Shown on the left is a photo taken facing westward in front of the property to the east, with the photo on the right taken facing eastward in front of the property to the west. Next slide. The intent of the front yard setback is to provide spatial separation between the road and residential uses. However, the subject property is within the urbanized hamlet area of Cresswell, which has reduced speed limits and contains numerous dwellings much closer than the proposed reduction of the front yard setback to 4.2 meters. The photo on the left shows the front yard from the northeast corner of the porch, with the photo on the right showing the extent of the front yard measured from the property line. Next slide, please. As the covered porch is replacing an existing porch with no additional expansion laterally or towards the road, there are no anticipated land use compatibility issues presented to the front yard to road interface. The established building line of the replacement porch is no closer to the road than the limit of development established to the east at 95 Cresswell Road, as shown in the photo on the right. The photo on the left was taken at a neighboring property illustrating a similar build to what is being proposed through this application. Comments were received from Engineering Division, Building Division, and the Part H Sewage Systems Supervisor with no concerns regarding the application. Based on the content of the report, staff respectfully recommends approval subject to the conditions within the report. Thank you.
And thank you, sir. Are there any questions of the planner? All right. Is the applicant online? Does the applicant wish to speak to the application? That being said, is there anyone online wishing to speak in support of the application? In support of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Committee. Mr. Strangway, Mrs. Richardson?
As printed.
Yep. And seconded. Any further comments or questions by anyone? All right, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. We're now dealing with file number D20-2020-021, and this is 15 Rockway Trail, Geographic Township of Bexley. And again, Mr. Stainton, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose and effect of the application is to request relief from the following provisions of the Township of Bexley zoning bylaw. Section 3.1.3.2, which is to permit an accessory structure, which is the detached garage, in a residential zone that is greater than 5 meters in height at a proposed 6.6 meters. The owners of 15 Rockway Trail have submitted an application involving the construction of a 1.5-story, 210 square meter or 2,260 square feet, 3-car detached garage and associated deck. The garage is 6.6 meters or 21.65 feet in height, requiring a 1.6 meter relief from the maximum height provision associated with accessory structures. The relief is required to allow for the storage and maintenance of recreational equipment associated with water sports, in particular windsurfing. No habitable space is proposed within the upper level of the garage. Next slide, please. The subject property is situated on a peninsula of the western portion of Balsam Lake, southwest of Long Point. The neighborhood consists primarily of shoreline residential lots with forested lands to the south. The property is a corner lot bordered by a private, unmaintained road identified as Rockway Trail to the north and east. The shoreline residences within the neighborhood vary in age and built form. The adjacent parcels are smaller than the subject lands. However, the residences within the neighborhood are relatively modest in size, which allows for good spatial separation between homes and for the retention of vegetated screening between properties to increase privacy. Next slide, please. Shown is a site plan of the property. Note the size of the lot in relation to the adjacent properties. Next slide, please. The elevation renderings of the proposed 3-car garage and deck are provided here. The proposed northern and eastern decks are intended to facilitate access relating to the storage and maintenance of equipment specific to drying sails and equipment associated with windsurfing. Sliding doors permit access to the deck in order to hang the sails to be dried. Due to the placement of the septic system in relation to the dwelling, the proposed location provides the least amount of disturbance to the property while allowing for shorter transportation distances of the recreational equipment to the shore. The proposed garage design ensures that it appears more residential in nature rather than utilitarian and will complement the neighborhood. Next slide, please. The subject property is surrounded on all sides by vegetated buffers, which effectively screen the property from the road and neighboring lots. The northern property line consists of a mature cedar hedge, along with a variety of shrubs and coniferous trees, as shown in the photo on the left. The intent of the general provisions section of the zoning bylaw is to restrict the height of accessory buildings to ensure the use is accessory to the primary use. The existing 2-story dwelling is situated much higher in elevation on the lot in relation to the proposed garage, maintaining most of the visual interest to the property as shown in the photo on the right. The property is of sufficient size to accommodate the detached garage within the large open space to the east of the dwelling and is not anticipated to adversely impact the use of the abutting residential lots. Next slide, please. The location of the proposed garage is within a large, flat, open field area, which itself is larger than most of the individual lots within the area. A gravel driveway terminates east of the septic system for the residents. A small garden shed currently provides minimal storage space with boats, trailers, and other recreational items currently being stored in open space. The photo on the left illustrates the nature of the vegetated screening along the northern property line abutting Rockway Trail. The photograph on the right is taken facing northeast towards Rockway Trail. Next slide. The eastern and southern property lines are also well vegetated with a variety of coniferous and deciduous trees, as well as a dense selection of shrubs. No adverse impacts to the neighborhood are anticipated due to the presence of the vegetated buffers. The accessory garage and deck provide additional amenity space and storage space on the lot without adversely impacting the function of the front and exterior side yards. The construction of the garage will provide for additional space to store vehicles, boats, and water sport related recreational items. As the garage bay doors are facing southward, any visual impacts are mitigated through the mature deciduous trees and shrubs present along the southern interior side yard. The photo on the left shows the proposed location of the garage, while the photo on the right captures the vegetated nature of the lots to the south. Next slide, please. Shown on the left is a photo taken facing westward in front of the property to the east, with the photo on the right taken facing eastward in front of the property to the west. Next slide. These photos were taken in order to illustrate the nature of the northern property line as seen from Rockway Trail to the north. The photo on the left was taken facing southeast, where the proposed garage would be situated. Note the presence of several large trees on the left. The photo on the right was taken facing westward towards Balsam Lake along Rockway Trail. Again, fairly dense vegetation on the left. Next slide. These photos were taken to illustrate the variety of detached accessory garages in the neighborhood. The photo on the left was taken at 22 Rockway Trail and shows that garages of similar height have been constructed in the neighborhood. Comments were received from Engineering Division, Building Division, and the Part 8 Sewage Systems Supervisor with no concerns regarding the application. In addition, Kawartha Conservation provided comments indicating that they have no concerns with the proposed application and they have issued a permit for the detached garage. There is one set of public comments in favor of the application, which were submitted by Rico Cirizati of 20 Rockway Trail. Public comments in opposition of the application were received from the following individuals at the following addresses: Gloria Sharples Dumond of 8 Rockway Trail, Ann and Vern Harding of 16 Rockway Trail, Emilio and Agostina Setti of 22 Rockway Trail, Jennifer Proctor and Bernard Penna of 24 Rockway Trail, Harold and Susan Rapp of 15 Otter Road, Arlene and Dan O'Neill McClellan of 10 Rockway Trail, W. Kozanuk of 18 Rockway Trail, and Dave Niswander of 26 Rockway Trail. The submitted letters of opposition can be summarized into two common themes of opposition. One, flooding and drainage issues exacerbated as a result of the footprint of the detached garage. And two, sizing concerns and privacy disturbance to residents of Rockway Trail as a result of the creation of habitable space within the upper portion of the garage. Regarding the potential flooding and drainage issues resulting from the situation of the detached garage. Through a memorandum of understanding with Kawartha Conservation, all Planning Act applications are reviewed in accordance with their regulation under Section 28 of the Ontario Conservation Authorities Act, as well as the natural heritage, hazards, and water components of the provincial policy statement. The city relies on their expertise and technical understanding of matters related to flooding, erosion, pollution, and conservation of land. Kawartha Conservation has submitted comments indicating that they have no concerns with the application based on a review of the application and has already issued a permit, which is permit number 2019-333, issued on October 23rd of 2019 under their regulation for the detached garage submitted through this application. Moreover, staff inquired with the city's engineering division regarding the necessity of a lot drainage and grading plan associated with the proposal. City engineering advised that a lot drainage and draining plan is not triggered for an application of this nature. In terms of Rockway Trail itself, the road is a private road that is unmaintained by the city. The city does not assume responsibility for the management and conveyance of drainage along the road. With respect to the culvert blockage, which was identified in several of the letters of opposition, the issue remains a civil matter between landowners. I'd also like to point out that the plans provided show the structure as being slab on grade. Regarding the sizing concerns and the potential privacy disturbances, the applicant has attested to the fact that the upper portion is needed for storage and maintenance of equipment associated with water sports. The deck is required to hang dry sails associated with windsurfing. No plumbing fixtures, kitchenette, oven plug-in have been shown as part of the plans. Through pre-consultation associated with the designer, it was mentioned or suggested that from staff that only one sliding door facing away from Rockway Trail be posed in order to alleviate any privacy concerns. As a result of the comments received to date, staff is revising the original recommendation to include the following conditions: that there be no sliding doors on the north wall of the detached garage. Any windows proposed on the north wall must be at least 1 meter above the finished floor elevation of the second floor. And that to satisfy the aforementioned condition, the owner shall prepare and submit to the planning division building elevations of the detached garage to the satisfaction of said division. The elevations are to be prepared in general accordance with Appendix D to report COA 2020-025, and said satisfactory elevation shall be submitted as part of the amended building permit application. Based on the content of the report, staff respectfully recommends conditional approval of the application based on the revised conditions provided. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions of the planner? Mr. Marr?
Thank you. To you, I'm curious to know how you came up, why the number 2, that there be no sliding doors. What's the rationale behind that?
There were several concerns raised with respect to the situation of sliding doors on the north face of the proposed detached garage. In an attempt to eliminate potential, we'll say, potential privacy concerns which were expressed from the neighboring lot, we recommended that it be reduced to a window form to prevent people from exiting and entering at that side of the building, and imposing just one exit and entryway on the west side of the building for the sake of hanging the sails associated with windsurfing.
Another question I have for you. According to the plans, and I don't know if you've seen the plans, you make...
Yep.
You suggest in here that because of the size, it couldn't be used for anything more than hanging sails. It's not really habitable?
Correction, I did not say that.
No.
I was basing that on the justification and the rationale provided by the applicant.
So if it's just for hanging sails, then why does it need to be so high if it's not going to be habitable? I mean, it's obviously you got full-size patio doors and a deck. It looks to me like it's going to be used for more than hanging sails.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the rationale was to also provide additional storage in addition to just the water sports and water recreation-based content. Through the application, there was no kitchenette, no fixtures proposed, no plug-in associated with an oven, and the applicant submitted the application based on a commissioning of oaths, which the rationale was again provided that the intent of the upper storage area would be for storage and to facilitate the maintenance and storage of water sports recreational items.
Do you know what the clearance is inside from the floor to the ceiling?
I do. I have the plans here. Sorry, you were asking for the clearance from the ground level or from the second story to the peak of the ceiling? Hello?
Second story, please.
The second story would be 3.36 meters to the peak from the second level to the peak.
I'll go to Mrs. Archer then while you're doing that. Go ahead, Ms. Archer.
Through you, please, to the planner.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I missed the latter half of Mr. Marsh's comment.
All right, he's going through some paperwork here, so I'll, Mrs. Archer, go ahead. Mrs. Archer has a question for you while Mr. Marsh is getting organized there.
On
Certainly.
Condition 2, that there be no sliding doors on the north wall, could that either remove the word sliding or just put no ingress and egress on the north wall? Because, I mean, they could put 2 doors on that aren't sliding doors, could they not?
Correct. That condition could be revised to reflect that.
Thank you.
Mr. Marsh, are you ready to go ahead?
Is the applicant online by any chance?
Let's finish with the planner first.
Well, I'd like to then maybe come back to the planner once we hear from the applicant.
Question from Mrs. Richardson. Go ahead to the planner.
If the deck is just for drying sails and the ceiling seems to be quite high, why do they need a wraparound deck? Why can they not just have it on the east wall and stop it there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is a valid question. Through conversation with the applicant, there was no additional discussion as to why the deck needed to wrap around the entirety or at least 3/4 of the garage.
Not a follow-up question, but I'll have some recommendations later on.
Mr. Strangway, question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at the height that's requested here, can it, by going to that height, would that not be considered the height of a 2-story building?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe it is the height of 1.5 stories and not 2 stories. However, I would defer that comment to, I don't believe we have Suzanne of the building department, but I would defer to someone else for clarification on that exact height.
Mr. Hawley, did you want to comment on that?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Yes, Mr. Stainton's correct. That would be sort of similar to a 1.5 story. It's not a full flat ceiling on the second floor. There are some dormer windows on it that sort of come out on an angle, so it would be sort of very similar to a 1.5 story structure in that sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Mr. Marsh? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Strangway. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
You had a follow-up?
So I'm thinking of this of a Cape Cod style. with that kind of height, does that still not lend itself to, at some future point, if somebody wanted to put living quarters in that area, that height would allow that, would it not?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Oh,
Sorry, Richard, you go ahead.
sorry, through the chair. It's very difficult to speculate on that. I mean, height aside, it would need, firstly, it would need a building permit for that purpose. Secondly, if they're not putting in any plumbing or anything like that, obviously that would have to be retrofitted. And if they weren't going to make that habitable, they would also need a change to their septic system potentially. So, I mean, there would be a number of considerations that would need to be done before it could be made as habitable space. For committee's benefit, we are working on accessory dwelling unit provisions. However, we're not really at a point yet where we can say whether or not this would meet that requirement. But they are coming, and they could apply in situations on cottage properties as well, because the province has mandated that they be applicable in all residential situations.
Yeah, and before I go back to Mr. Strangway, I was just going to add that because we were advised that about 2 meetings ago, or perhaps a little longer, that we shouldn't add that condition that we used to add, that in fact there'd be no habitable space in the loft of a garage or a boathouse, because apparently the provincial policy statement either had changed or was about to change to reflect that it could be, given certain considerations were met, correct? Mr. Hawley?
Trying to unmute myself. Yes, Mr. Chair, that is correct. The Planning Act legislation has changed. The province is obviously looking for more housing, more affordable housing options, and those provisions will apply both in urban areas, in hamlets, as well as in rural areas or in waterfront areas as well. So this, once our regulations come into place, this property may benefit from that, but I mean, I don't know what our regulations are going to look like yet at this point in time.
Thank you. Mr. Strangway?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to go to condition 3. To satisfy a condition 2, the owner shall prepare and submit to the planning division building elevations of the detached garage to satisfy of said division. I'm wondering, with regard to those elevations, it has been identified that this is, I know for a fact, this is an exceedingly low area. I'm also anticipating to put a building in. We've seen the picture of the house, and you can see the house is built way up. I'm wondering if that will be the same necessity for the garage for it to be well elevated to avoid flooding in the springtime.
That probably should go to Mr. Stainton.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. It is my understanding, based on the plans that have been submitted as part of this application, that the structure will be constructed as slab on grade. I would have to pull the particulars of the Conservation Authority's permit in order to see if any additional grading or changes to the footprint have been proposed. However, based on the materials that were provided, it is suggesting that the building be slab on grade.
Oh, okay, if you could check on that, that'd be great, because as I say, if you look at the picture of the house, you can see it has been built way up in order to avoid flooding in that area.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that is correct. That was one of the first items that we noticed upon conducting the site visit, was how much above grade the dwelling was. which also factored into one of the rationale behind the garage still maintaining that accessory nature, as the dwelling unit itself would be considerably higher than the detached garage as proposed.
Thank you.
Mr. Stainton, before I go back to Mr. Myers, I just have a question for you. You started with the amended conditions there, you started with 2. Am I to assume from that that 1 stays? And if that's the case, I believe this is going to be further amended, number 2, to indicate that there won't be an exit or entrance off that wall. Is that going to affect your printing in condition 1?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe it will. I'm just bringing up, just bear with me 1 second.
Because you've indicated there, in accordance with the
Yes,
sketch.
it will. Yes, it will. You are correct, Mr. Chair. It will influence Appendice or Appendix D. So condition 1, yes, will be amended as such.
All right, I'll go through the process here, and then we'll get back to you with respect to perhaps a potential wording for that condition then. Thank you for that. Morris, go
Sure.
ahead.
Through you to the planner. As far as lot coverage goes, is there anything to stop them from just putting another bay on their garage? They've got that deck thing out there. Why not just extend it? 5 meters gives them lots of room if they put another bay on and they leave it open to the ceiling above to hang their sails. Is there anything
I
to prohibit
don't
that?
believe there's anything preventing them with respect to lot coverage from doing that. I would have to, depending on the size of the bay, take it into account in accordance with the maximum gross floor area with respect to accessory structures. However, I would need to revisit that depending on a revised proposal.
Right. So, and again, back that it was questioned a little bit earlier about the decking and all the decking. I guess we have we have the ability to amend this accordingly. That would not allow for any access other than the east door, I think it is, or whatever, or west.
Correct.
And that no other decking be allowed? Because it's sort of obvious. Well, it would appear as though this was going to be some sort of a bunkie as well. I mean, you got this wonderful big deck to go hang sails. I find that a little extravagant. Guess you got nice sails. But, and you've got that big deck off the
through you,
side.
Mr. Chair, I sorry for interrupting you. I have to rely on the submission from the applicant and the fact that they have verified the contents of the application to be true to their knowledge through a commissioner of oaths, and that was the justification and rationale presented to me when the application was submitted.
Yep. And I respect that accordingly, okay. But there's nothing to stop them from putting making it a 4-bay garage instead of a 3, by the looks of it. Quick.
I would have to revisit the exact dimensions of that in order to give you an accurate response.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Yeah, Mr. Richardson, go ahead.
Through you, excuse me, through you for clarification, did I understand you right that the city and this committee has no jurisdiction over the flooding of that area because it's an unassumed road?
That is through you, Mr. Chair. That is correct. We have been in consultation with Public Works regarding any form of limited service agreement or any type of agreement in relation to Rockway Trail, and it is a private and unmaintained road that the city does not have jurisdiction over.
So therefore, anybody can flood out their neighbor at their will?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we rely heavily on our partner agencies, in particular the Conservation Authority, with respect to their mandate to protect not only the property owner, but the adjacent property owners in terms of upstream and downstream implications of flooding. As I've mentioned before, the permit was issued and they have issued comments as per the Memorandum of Understanding, and they have had no concerns with the proposed application.
I would assume on private property, it'd obviously become a civil matter.
That is correct.
Councillor, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if the planner, Kent, would have an answer for this, but in one of the comments, it said that a building permit was in fact denied 2 years ago or a certain point in time, and now this case was allowed. Maybe it was 2 years later was allowed. And I don't know if you'd have any knowledge of that at all, or it'd be a building department question, but do you know any of the history?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I am aware that a building permit was canceled. I believe it was in 2014 or 2016. As to the rationale surrounding why that was canceled, I cannot speculate. But a building permit was canceled, not necessarily denied. I believe it was canceled by the owner.
Well, do we know if there was a variance process prior to the building permit? Because that's kind of, the building permit process is an after the fact. So do you know if there's any history on whether or not there was an application for a variance?
To my knowledge, there was no variance application applied for. Perhaps the previous configuration met the height requirements. I can't speculate.
All right, thank you for that. Any further questions of the planner? All right. Is the applicant here? Does the applicant wish to speak to the application? No? All right. Is there anyone online wishing to speak in support of the application? In support of the application? Anyone online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? All right. Committee, I guess I'm back to you. Mr. Marsh?
The application be denied. It's not minor in nature, nor what's number 3? Sorry, okay. It's not minor in nature for starters. And it does not meet the intent of the zoning bylaw.
We can get you a seconder before we start discussing. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Yo? All right. Mr. Marsh? Well, we are asked to articulate when we deny, so.
Articulating that well, it's not minor in nature, in my opinion, and what they're trying to obtain, they can obtain without a minor variance. So under the zoning bylaw, they can do it already. It's similar to the other one that I was concerned about. It's to restrict the height of accessory buildings to ensure the use is accessory to primary use. So that right in that alone, there is a way to restrict that height. Okay, whatever they want to obtain here, they can obtain without going the extra height. 5 meters is lots to obtain it.
Councillor Yo?
Yeah, and I totally agree with Mr. Marsh. The property is large enough that anything they'd gain in the height, they could certainly gain on the ground, and that would at least alleviate the concerns about height in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Further comments?
Yeah, I appreciate the report that the planner has brought forward. The difficulty in these areas, as we know around the lakes, is that you don't have to look too far to find where people have exceeded the height, and then it's the consistency that is the difficulty. But I think based on if this is just an area to dry sails, as they say, that seems excessive in height, and at this time, I'm not prepared to support that.
Any further comments? I have a question of the planner. If you're reading through these concerns, they've indicated that surrounding areas have advised them that this isn't minor. Where are we with, obviously, you're supporting the variance, but Mr. Stainton, what is your, I guess, position with respect to minor versus major variance?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I guess what it comes down to is the maximum allowable is 5 meters. If they were to propose something that was within the confines of the zoning bylaw, obviously they would meet all of the provisions of the zoning bylaw with respect to side yard, lot coverage, etc. The 1.6 meters, or I guess it would be 5 feet, relief wasn't seen as a tremendous impact, given the carrying capacity of this land, in that it is substantially larger than the adjacent parcels. So as such, that variance in height to facilitate, again, the ability to hang the sails associated with the water sports was why that only that 1.6 meters was deemed minor in nature.
All right. Anything further comment-wise?
If I may ask the committee and Mr. Marsh, the 2 reasons that you provided are quite acceptable. The second, where you spoke that it does not meet the intent of the zoning bylaw, and then you gave clarity as to why that is, that's great. If I could just have maybe one further statement that it's not minor in nature, because that would assist us in drafting our decision for you.
Because, and actually going further, it's not desirable or appropriate for the use of the land. Okay, and further, 3 does not meet the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw.
So if I may, it is not desirable due to the massing of it, due to the like yes, it doesn't meet one of the 4 tests, or you've now picked 2 or 3. I just need the why. So you did the why for the zoning bylaw, the why for the it's not desirable for the use of the land. Was it due to the massing?
The massing,
okay.
And you make reference in your report about it being suitable to the neighborhood. Generally, it does not, and it exceeds, it's higher than the general neighborhood. It does not need to be.
So are those the 2 reasons you'd like to pick, sir?
Sure.
Okay.
And I'm happy for more help from my seconder or...
Seconder, I missed that. Who? Oh, that was Councillor Yeo. He provided the assistance on the does not meet the intent of the zoning bylaw. I think I have what I believe we have what we need.
And thank you for that, Mrs. Ray, because we've been, well, I wouldn't say criticized, but there's been comments in the past that we didn't, as a committee, articulate clearly enough some of the points. And the only comments I would make as chair to the committee is this: we've had these things before us before, and we have denied. So you put council in a position that the City of Kawartha Lakes planners are on side with the application. So they probably will be subpoenaed as witnesses at if there's an appeal. And as well, we only have to meet one of there's 4 tests, but we only have to meet one of them in order for the denial to occur. But again, it's something that will go before council, and just keeping in mind that the City of Kawartha Lakes planners will be on the other side with respect to the defense. So I leave that with you. This not as a chair, I should advise you of that. All right, any further comments? Mr. Marsh, any sum up?
That's enough, thanks.
All right. I call the question. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. I guess under other business, Richard, to you, Mr. Hawley, well, obviously, we've experienced some problems, although we seem to have worked through it. I understand the reason for not having the planners here, which would be the best case scenario, but apparently it conflicts with the required numbers to be in a room. Am I correct with that? We had the two planners here. Does that is that more than we're allowed in a room?
Typically, yes. There are some. We've gone through this with building staff, and basically, we would like to minimize the number of staff that enter into council chambers, and allow for social distancing. I think the issue is potentially if staff go there may be a request, then why not the public as well? So I think we are limiting the staff that are in council chambers with you to sort of the minimum that are sort of required to be there.
That's fine. And the next question I have is this then. Given we've experienced issues, and I think I mentioned in my email to you for the first meeting that we were having, we experienced difficulties with respect to the audio. And again, that occurred today. So I'm just wondering, and once Mr. Stainton was on his phone, things went off very well. Is there a possibility then that both the planners could be on phones and our secretary here could in fact do the video as she was doing? That seemed to work very well. Is that a problem, or could they do that? Be on the phones?
Mr. Chair, we'll speak with the clerk's department about that. I think the preference is that they be visible to the public and to the committee, but we'll have to review that. One of the things perhaps is that we need to investigate perhaps video cameras that can be provided to staff so that they have a video connection. But we will have to take a look at that. I mean, it's noted, and we'll sit down and talk with the clerks and IT departments about that issue.
Oh, and thank you. And I'm certainly not finding any fault with the planners. They did an excellent job. It's just that if there's going to be continuing issues with the audio, then maybe that's the way to fix it.
Those lines, why couldn't they use, just wait in one of the offices here, and then when it's their gig, they come in and do their thing. And as far as the numbers go, it's no different than if you have a full council present. So I don't, they can wait in the car and phone in like they do other places, doctors' offices and stuff. When it's their gig, they come in. Because I think you're also going to get into some. I don't want to be part of something that's going to cause some more costs than you need for this, because I think it is for all it would take if the two planners, or why not have one planner present them all, and if they're available and they can be called in, do their presentation and then leave again. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel, but I think it could be simplified. Well, maybe not. I'm getting.
And please understand, these comments are all made to try and help. That's all we're doing is just, did you want to speak to that, Joel?
Sure, the clerk's office can speak to that. I think what we have experienced today is just a connectivity issue based off of the planner's personal home internet. And so I think a very reasonable solution that would work quite well is that the planners either present from either inside City Hall in another room or inside the service center in their planning office where the internet connection is very good. And we've had plenty of other staff work and present quite successfully from within their own buildings. As you can see, Richard is presenting quite fine from his own office. And he's got a good internet connection with the city line there, and I think that will really help improve. So just a recommendation that can be made to the planners that they be in a city building that has a good internet connection. That will really help improve the audio and video process.
And thank you. In fact, that was just discussed by us here just during our 5-minute break as to why couldn't they be in their offices. It might help. So you've maybe clarified. So we'll leave it with you, Mr. Hawley, as to how it all works out in the end. Anything else under other business? Yeah.
This may not be other business, but I have a question about our denial of the last one. When it proposed if it's desirable and appropriate for the use of land, are we allowed to bring into play all the comments we've got that everything was against it? Or is that not appropriate?
No, I think it is quite appropriate. That's as much evidence as any of the words that are said here. So if you wished as, yes, as a part of that to enter that, not a problem. Just so you know. Now, back to you. Yes, I think that you could mention that as part of the, yeah.
It's up to Mr. Marsh. It was his motion, I believe, right?
Oh, yeah, it can be presented as a friendly and see what he says. If he said no, then we would take it as separate.
I believe the decision is made with a vote. If it was still being discussed, I think there could be a friendly, but not, you did do your vote.
I would have asked for a 2/3 vote from here, and if I got it, then we go back to you. Yes, Sandra?
Could Mrs. Archer not put forward a follow-up motion?
Well, what we can do is, if it was offered as a friendly and Mr. Marsh said no, then it can be put on as a separate amendment. You can make a separate motion. It's an amendment to his original. His original stays, but you also can put in an amendment to it.
And that would be the follow-up.
So can I do that now, or are we talking for another time?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just one further question. I'm a little perplexed at how the first application we heard ended. I got the impression that you had said, yes, we'll go ahead and hear comments, and then we went on to the second application. So I think that's something we need to clarify, just what happened there and so on with staff.
No, actually, I'll take the fault there because what I normally do, even though there's no, I just discussed that, there's no discussion that's required on a deferral other than the time frame, and that's why I always ask the planner about the time frame. But on occasion as well, I will, on a deferral, I will ask, what threw me off, there's nobody here. So usually you'll say, is the applicant here? Do you have a problem with the deferral? I asked that. And I didn't do that this time, and I should have. Mr. Carroll, I should have had. Mr. Carroll then was getting into issues with respect to the actual investigation of the application, and I was, because that wouldn't be proper. So I'll take responsibility for that, and I should have asked, but it just, the way things are here, I guess at some point, I'm used to this, but, oh.
Yeah, and I appreciate what you're saying here, and I don't think there's any need whatsoever to point fingers or anything. I'm just saying, as far as our process is concerned, I think all of us were looking for further comments, and then we started into the next application.
Typically, the planner would present his report, and then you would ask for comments, and then we would do the recommendation. This time we did the planner report and the recommendation.
We don't normally ask for comments on a deferral.
No, but before we put the motion to defer, we would hear the comments from the public.
Anything further under, it's just, I guess we're all struggling with this. There's no question, and I just find it so, I don't know what the word is, it's just weird. That's all blank back there, and of course, we've been, how many years? And, it can't be any other way, I understand that, but it's going to be a case of just working through it, because I don't believe that, I'll believe we'll be doing this into next year, probably, without any doubt. So we're going to have to all adapt, and I'm the first one that better adapt, and I will work hard at it. So, all right.
Just a question on our upcoming schedule. When are we having 2 meetings? What month? I thought we were having an extra meeting to clear some files, not because we always did it. No?
Getting caught up as far as files go? How, where are we at? Richard?
Mr. Hawley, could you answer that?
Sorry, the audio's been cutting out quite a bit. Could you repeat the question, please?
How are we doing as far as getting caught up on files?
Well, we are getting caught up. It's just there are going to be some fairly large agendas still ahead of us for the next couple of months, and there are still applications coming in. So there will still be some large agendas in September and October, but we are starting to make some headway.
Yeah, because if I may respectively suggest, today's agenda certainly didn't reflect the backlog, in my opinion, with 6 applications. So we've had far more than that. So, all right. Else under other business? All right. The next meeting is Thursday, September the 17th, 2020 at 1 p.m. A motion to adjourn. Councillor Yeo, Mr. Marsh, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you.